Thank you, everyone. Just saw our wonderful president, Yitzhak Herzog, who's doing a great job of uniting the country, connecting people. Mayor of Yerushalayim, where are you? Moshe, you're too thin to see. Moshe, I have to say, Leon is doing also a remarkable job in the city of Jerusalem. I think anyone who looks around can see that things are running in a good direction. Kol hakavod. Publisher of Jerusalem Post, my friend Eli Azur. Kol hakavod for this event. Chairman of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Larry Meisel. Editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, Yaakov Katz. Where are you, Yaakov? I'm an avid reader of the Post, and I think it's on a great trajectory. It's become much more interesting. I read it a lot more, so I bet you've got a lot more hits. Sylvan Adams, for all the amazing work you've been doing for Israel. Eyal Chaimovsky, CEO of the Jerusalem Development Authority. Ambassadors, distinguished guests. So we're in the Museum of Tolerance, and I want to share with you a bit of what I'm learning from running this pretty eclectic government. That's a good word, eclectic. So about 4 months ago, we put together this hodgepodge of very, very different parties with very different ideas. And I didn't know if it was going to work. You couldn't know. Because there are people who think diametrically opposed from me on some pretty big issues. Now, 4 months in, I can tell you it's working. It's working. We've got a good government. We've got a good coalition. Robust system that's moving forward, and essentially the country that's been stuck for the better of 2.5 years is now we turned it on again. Things are moving. We're on our way out of the Delta wave without 1 day of closure, which is a remarkable feat. We're about to pass a budget in about 3 or 4 weeks, also a very meaningful budget. The budget in Israel always has two pieces. The budget, where you appropriate the funds, and then there's a law that's called Chok HaEsderim, that it's always appended to the budget, and that's where you shove in all the big and tough and unpopular reforms that a country needs to do, and we're doing it. Doing stuff that are unpopular but are right, are good for Israel. I'll give you an example. Raising the retirement age of women, which is something we got to do, because otherwise we're going to go bankrupt. It's not popular. No one wants to do it, but someone's got to do it. Otherwise, it just doesn't work out. So we're doing it. It's in. Another one, we're funding with 150 billion shekel a metro for Tel Aviv. Who would think of that? I don't know. Perhaps in London they've thought of having a metro in there. In Paris, in New York, but actually we're gonna be among the last countries with a metro. But here we are. We're putting the money and starting to work. Opening up imports on 110 product categories where effectively Israel had the non-tariff barriers. It's just more and more very important things that we're putting in, and it's working. But I want to tell you what I've learned. So the common slogan that we used was that 70% of the people agree on 70% of the issues. So let's focus on them and set the 30% aside. And it's true, and that's what we're doing. But actually, I now view a bigger potential. Let's start talking about the 30%. Let's start talking about the 30%. There's essentially in Israel three forces, political forces, ideological forces. There's the national force, Leumi, which roughly you would say it's the right wing. There's the humanistic global approach, which you would call very roughly the left. And then there's the religious approach, which would be the Haredim and the Orthodox. And in reality, we actually need all three vectors. So you might think of it as a tug of war, Meshichat Hevel, a three-way tug of war, right? You've got those three vectors, but you actually want that debate, right? In Israel, without, for example, the religious aspect, would not be an Israel I want, because we are the Jewish state. I'm happy there's Haredim, but we need to limit their political sway. I wouldn't want an Israel without a left wing. While clearly I feel differently on many issues, I'm happy there's that counter so we can debate it, because you always want an extra weight on that. You don't want an Israel without the national force. So my point is that it's not about just compromise, where if we move one way, the other side loses. It's about finding, in an ongoing tension, ongoing debate, ongoing friction between these three forces, finding the right point. And I'm proud to lead a government that's there. And while the government itself consists of only of some of the parties, I'm committed to all Israeli citizens. And the government is committed to all Israeli citizens. This is not a sectorial government. We're not taking care of a particular sector, but of all Israelis. And even that's a novelty. But for that to happen, there's got to be real dialogue. And dialogue consists of talking, but also a very novel thing in Israel called listening. Yeah, we ain't that good at that. I remember when I founded my high-tech company so we moved to Manhattan. You know, lots of Israeli startups start up from day one. So I had to explain to the Israelis, or actually to the Americans, I had to say, listen, in Israel, it's impolite to let the other side finish his sentence. We've got unique physics in Israel. Tell you, there's another unique physical law. It's the Holy Land. When an elevator opens up in Israel, you actually can get into the elevator before people leave. It works. But now, seriously, we got to work out this point. What's my vision? So for ages, the world has always been dealing with Israel's problems, right? Israel's always been this problem, conflict, and we got to get together in the UN, here, there, and deal with Israel's problems. I think it's time for Israel to step up, begin addressing the world's problems. And given that I've got 1 minute and 18 seconds going down to 16 seconds now, I'm just going to give you highlights. What are the big problems of the world right now? First of all, we've got COVID and pandemics, and this thing is going to accompany us for quite a while. From my perspective, I'm preparing Israel for the exit from Delta, but also to have a new methodology, even between waves, and how to deal with a wave or a new infection, a new virus that might bypass vaccinations. As long as vaccines work, that's fine, but we don't know that they'll always work. Not every disease has one, so how does the world prepare for that event? And the spoiler is we don't close the world. Got to figure out how. So I see Israel as a pioneer in that, and we're working on it. So it's not only the boosters, it's what if tomorrow there's a new variant that bypasses all the vaccines. What do we do? We're preparing for that. A second global problem is indeed political polarization, which I talked about. I think Israel is showing an amazing example of how to begin working and solving the political polarization, which is devastating. We saw it in the U.S., see it all around the world. There's an echo chamber. Everyone just keeps on getting reinforced in their pre-existing opinions. If you're right-wing, you're only exposed to more and more right-wing stuff. If you're left-wing, you're only get exposed in social media to reinforce, so that tears it apart. We got to put it back together. A third challenge is radical Islam terror, and in particular Iran, but Israel really is on the forefront. We are quite literally surrounded by the worst terror groups in the world. Not figuratively, literally. We've got Hezbollah on our border in the north. We've got Iranian militias on our Syrian border. We've got ISIS in the Sinai. We've got Hamas and Islamic Jihad on our Gaza border. But look, we're having a good day over here. So we're showing, and it's only begun, we're showing the world how you can deal with it. And this ongoing friction teaches us methodologies, technologies, intelligence. You know, day in, day out, almost every week, Israel will call up some European country and say, you know, right now there's a terror squad on this street, this building, 7th floor, go get them. And the local police goes and arrests a terror squad with explosive. We're saving lives all around the world. And finally, climate change. Israel was a pioneer. People don't realize it. Israel was a pioneer, a global pioneer, in using sun energy for heating up water heaters, dudei shemesh. Back in the 50s, 60s, Israel had it almost universally. But then we let up, and I think it's time that we step up. Now, Israel internally, domestically, is tiny. So we're not going to move we got to do the right stuff, but that's not going to move the needle. Where can we move the needle? With our technologies. We've got an amazing group of folks, but we need to direct them from, you know, yet another internet app that does something to using the brain power here to save the world. That's a better mission than just increasing the number of eyeballs watching an advertisement, which Israel's pretty good at. So those are 4 global challenges, which I view Israel as having to step up to that challenge. I do want to say regarding Iran, though, because I've had some discussions with a bunch of leaders, with President Biden, with Chancellor Merkel, Prime Minister Johnson and others. Look, Iran's blatantly violating the IAEA commitments. Not even talking about the JCPOA, I'm just talking about the very fundamental commitments. And we're not going to wait. And I expect the global powers to hold them accountable, bring them to the UN Security Council, hold Iran accountable for it. That would be the peaceful route. There are other routes. That's the right thing to do. And I'm going to continue pursuing that over the next few weeks and months. Finally, I want to say to all of you guests over here, so indeed Israel is a lighthouse of doing good things for the world in a storm, a lighthouse in a very stormy region. I'm proud to lead the government, to lead the nation that presents in these very tumultuous times an example of how you can do good while being strong in the toughest region in the world. Thank you very much. Toda rabah.